cactus and succulent growers, I'm Lynn. Welcome to Desert Plants of Avalon in the north of Ireland. And in today's video I'm going to be talking about polytunnels versus greenhouses and would I recommend, from my own experience, getting a polytunnel. So I'm going to be talking about the pros and cons of having a polytunnel for housing your cacti. Now I just want to start off, before I go on about the polytunnel, just to show you what I've got beautifully blooming in the polytunnel today. Lots of gymnos, absolutely blooming gorgeous. So then I'm going to first talk about the polytunnel that I have and where I got it from. And then I'm going to talk about the pros and the cons to having a polytunnel. Now this polytunnel here, this is one that I got from Polytunnels NI here in Northern Ireland. A very, very, very good, fantastic company, and a lovely gentleman called Wayne who came to fit up the polytunnel, and super brilliant and efficient. And this polytunnel is an 18 feet long by 12 feet wide polytunnel, and it has two doors. We've got the back door here that opens up, which is absolutely brilliant when you've got hot weather such as a nice sunny day like today, and we've got the two double doors there also on there to ventilate. Also we've got the bars going across, which is brilliant for any of the hanging, not only to put hanging baskets on, but also for extra support as well. It's actually a very, 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 very good polytunnel. However, I'm going to be talking about the advantages and the disadvantages, pros and cons of having a polytunnel for housing cacti and succulents and for growing them. Now, first I'm going to talk about the positives. And the obvious one is the light levels. We used to have a green covered polytunnel that was quite dark and it just let more filtered light. This is an absolutely brilliant polytunnel for the light because it's it's sort of a frosted cover but more or less quite clear, and it lets direct sun directly through onto the cacti. We have a south facing garden, and the polytunnel pretty much covers most of the back garden. It's more, I call it a garden, but it's more of a parking lot for a car. We don't have a car, so it's been perfect to have the polytunnel up here, and it lets plenty of light directly onto the cacti. And it's this year with the new polytunnel that we got last year has been absolutely brilliant. As I say, lets plenty of light onto the plants, so you get these gorgeous blooms at their best, and definitely noticed a lot more cacti in bud and bloom this year than previous years because of this lovely light polytunnel. So obviously the first advantage is it's a great way to keep the rain off your plants, protect them from the elements such as the wind and cold weather as well, because it's always a lot warmer in this polytunnel than it is outside. Whatever the weather, even on overcast day, it's always a good few degrees warmer. For example, today it'll be about 18 Celsius outside, and you can see there on the thermometer it's almost 35 Celsius, so it's a lovely temperature. This is with both the doors open for ventilation. So great for adding extra heat, and also great for protecting from the rain and the elements as well. And the also advantage as well is when you're overwintering cacti in the winter, again, you need somewhere where you can overwinter them, where it's bright and cool. And it's a great way to protect them for the winter if you have the space for a polytunnel. And also it's great as well because if you can insulate it, we have insulation on the floor. It's a great way for protecting your cacti getting through. A great way to house them as well. Like as I say, this is an 18 feet long by 12 foot wide polytunnel. So it's ample space for all of the cacti. Display them at the best as well for putting all the tables on. So it's absolutely brilliant. Also, the main advantage with a polytunnel is that it's a lot more affordable than a classic greenhouse will be. A greenhouse of this size 12 feet wide by 18 feet long would cost quite a few grand, which I don't have. So a polytunnel is a lot more affordable. It's also quite good as well if you only have an allotment or you have some growing area. A lot of people don't have a garden or anywhere they can have a greenhouse or a polytunnel. So a polytunnel is great for putting up in allotments, and it's also easy when you move in house. I rent, so we don't know how long I'm able to stay here. So when I do move, the polytunnel can be collapsed down. Obviously the cover has to be replaced, and I'm going to talk about the cover when I talk about the disadvantages in a minute. But other than the cover, everything can be taken down again, even the wood and all the bars and everything. And you can either, if you're good at putting them up yourself, you can put it up yourself, or you can get somebody to put it up for you. We'd probably get the Polytunnels NI guys to put it up if we were to move this with us. So it's great in that way, and as I say, it's far more affordable, plenty of light. Now I'm going to talk about the disadvantages, because in this video I've been asked a lot about the new polytunnel, how is it and everything like that, and people have said, I'm thinking of getting one, is it better than a greenhouse? Now the disadvantage is, I'm going to start off first of all with the cover. We got this polytunnel at the end of October. It was November, almost December by the time we were able to put all the plants back in here. And it's July now, and already we've had to patch up the cover multiple times. This is example here. This is all polytunnel repair tape. Looks a bit like a patchwork quilt. And also on the other side as well, we've had to do it. The problem with polytunnel covers, the cover itself is actually quite strong, but they don't last very long. I mean, the biggest problem here is we get a lot of birds, seabirds, because we live quite close to the coast, and we get seagulls and also crows and other type of birds land on the roof and on the sides. And as cute as they are, especially the baby seagulls, they're adorable, they're all spotty, their claws will go straight through the cover. And this is an example here. It's not the cacti with their spines you have to worry about, it's the birds, because their claws go straight through. And we're quite sheltered here in the garden. We're not in an open space. But obviously we've had to completely touch up the polytunnel many times. We had a cat that got in here a couple of weeks ago and clawed all in here. And we had to also touch it up with extra cover and polytunnel tape. So you can touch up the covers, and maybe it's a bit easier than if you had glass, especially having to repair glass if you've got things throwing debris, stones and everything during storms. But the covers really do not last. I thought I'd get more than a few months out of it anyway. So in the winter time I'm going to have to probably just touch it up again with more repair tape, and it is a really big disadvantage. The second disadvantage, and this is a big disadvantage to me anyway, is that a polytunnel, I'll just step back, you can see it's arch shaped. It's a lovely shape, that's why they're called polytunnels. It is a tunnel shape. However, it's not the most practical for housing cacti. And the reason for that is, for example, I've got them all on tables here, and they take up a lot of space. Cacti, obviously for the obvious reasons with the cover, they're spiny. You can't put them too close to the cover, but that's not necessarily a problem. The biggest problem is that when it comes to having your cacti nicely displayed, then, whereas with a normal greenhouse or even a polycarbonate sort of greenhouse stroke polytunnel type, you can have flat sides. And if you have flat sides with a roof like that, but flat, you can put cacti right to the back, and you can also have them on stands. In other words, you can stack a lot of plants up onto plant stands. I can't do this here because of the arch side, so you can't have any plants going up, if you know what I mean. It would save a lot of space if I had flat sides on this polytunnel, which you can't get with polytunnels, obviously only greenhouses. And that is a disadvantage, because although this is a large polytunnel, it's 12 feet wide as I mentioned by 18 feet long, I could have a greenhouse half of that size, taking up half the area, and I could have plant stands pushed right to the back with shelves on and stack all the plants on, and it would take a lot less space. So that is a bit of a disadvantage. The other disadvantage is if you have to insulate your polytunnel, which I have to do in winter, I have to insulate it, hence the bubble wrap here. It's a nightmare to put bubble wrap on an arched shaped polytunnel. My old greenhouse that was green covered was actually shaped like a house. It had more flat sides and then more like a typical house shape. And it was easy to bubble wrap it because you just put the bubble wrap down the sides, straight through the sides. Very similar shape to a greenhouse would be. But this has got arched sides and it's been terrible to keep the bubble wrap in. It's been such a challenge, and I'm actually dreading this winter when we have to put all the bubble wrap in again, because I don't know how we're going to get it to stay in. What we had to do in the winter is put these ties here, which we used a washing line, tied it up across to hold the bubble wrap in place to stop it from falling. As you can see, we've had to do it with the roof. We've got these ties here as well, which has been great because we use that to hang up the hanging baskets. But it has not been practical. The bubble wrap kept falling down. It was a real dilemma. And we've removed the bubble wrap now because it's summer and we let the sun come onto the plants and the heat. Kept this bubble wrap in the middle section because this is where we have more of sort of the epiphytes hanging up and they need a little bit more shade. So, plus it would be a lot of hassle taking it off the middle. But it's not great. If you have a greenhouse or you happen to be lucky enough to find some type of polycarbonate polytunnel where you can have flat sides, it's much easier for bubble wrap. If you don't have to worry about bubble wrapping and insulating your polytunnel or greenhouse in the winter time, because you live in a warm climate and you don't get very cold winter temperatures, then you don't really have to worry about this. So this is a problem for me because I have to insulate with bubble wrap because I heat my polytunnel in winter with a heater that keeps it a minimum of 5 Celsius, 41 Fahrenheit in here to protect all the plants. I keep them all cool and dry, but they do need a heater. If I didn't put a heater in, then obviously it's going to cost me more to keep it at that temperature. Bubble wrap works brilliantly at keeping the heat in. We double layer the bubble wrap as well. We have 2 layers on it, so it really insulates well. But as I say, the curved sides are a disaster. Bear that in mind if you have to put bubble wrap into your polytunnels. The other thing with the polytunnel is it's very, very important that you do have, if you have a polytunnel, have 2 doors so the ventilation comes across, because you don't have windows in polytunnels, and that is a dilemma because it can get very, very, very hot. We have both these doors open here to ventilate, and it's been a godsend, because if we didn't have that, the plants would cook in here. And I live in Ireland, which we don't get very hot summer temperatures anyway, but it gets very hot in here. So if you have a polytunnel in a warmish climate, it can get very, 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 very hot. So a greenhouse, you can have windows open and things like that. You can't do that with a polytunnel. So that is another disadvantage as well. It does get very hot in here, and you have to bear that in mind. So this is where a greenhouse is more practical for opening windows, especially if you have a greenhouse that has the automatic windows that open up when it reaches a certain temperature, which is great if you're out at work during the day. You don't have to worry about the plants getting too hot in there. So then, my verdict: would I recommend getting a polytunnel for housing your cacti? Well, I can only talk from my own experience. This polytunnel has been probably really good, and it's definitely an upgrade from our last one. However, the next time I have to replace it, I will not be getting a polytunnel because of the reasons I mentioned. The cover does not last, it's not practical, and also having to insulate the bubble wrap just does not stay. So it's a real challenge. So the next one I get, I'll probably get a polycarbonate greenhouse, and I'll probably go for one that is half or 3/4 of the size, depending on the practicalities of it, of the size of this big polytunnel. I can definitely go for a smaller one, and it means if it's got straight sides, I can put shelving up, put nice shelves up and really stack up the plants and display them better than having to be all on single tables. That's taking up a lot of space. But the biggest challenge, as I mentioned, has been the cover. And okay, you can replace the covers, but for me to do this, having to take all of the plants out again, which is what I would have to do, because the guys, when they fit the cover, have to come in as well as out to pull the cover down. So it would, you know, the thought of having to take all of these out again and do that, it'd just be a nightmare. So patching the cover up is all I'm going to be able to do for now. But I hope you found that useful. Just bear that in mind, guys, if you're thinking of it. I say my opinion, if you can afford it and you can get one, get a proper greenhouse, either a polycarbonate one or a glass one. And it's more stability, and also you don't have to worry about things like the cover and bubble wrap sliding down and all of the other things. If however you're using it just to grow vegetables or your other things you want to grow, it's quite practical. And maybe even if you're just using it to house your cacti in the summer, you just want a polytunnel there just to put your plants in the summer to keep the rain off, absolutely great. But for long term, next time it's a greenhouse, guys, or better still, a conservatory. Oh, maybe I just need to win the lottery and that could answer my prayers. So guys, I hope you found that useful. Should you think about getting a polytunnel, and do consider all of the sort of fors and against that I've mentioned in this video. If you haven't done already, then do please subscribe and do click the notification bell. Do follow me on Insta, Twitter and Facebook at Desert Plants of Avalon for lots of flower videos and photographs on my Instagram and Facebook page. And if you haven't checked out my website, then please do, desertplantsofavalon.com. I want to wish you all a fantastic cactus power day and lots of cactus